Welcome to the It's Probably Fine Club. I started this club for all the people who thought something was probably fine, or were told something was probably fine, and later discovered it absolutely was not. Today's story is about the very first house I ever bought, and how I learned that brand new does not necessarily mean correctly built. Now, when this happened, I was 22 years old. I was still a law student. I was pregnant with my first child. My husband and I were getting ready to become parents, and we were incredibly excited because we had just purchased our first home. It was a beautiful brand new house in a new construction community. Everything was shiny. Everything smelled new. Everything looked perfect. I was busy planning a nursery. I was busy preparing for a baby. I was definitely not thinking about home inspections. In fact, it never even occurred to me that a brand new home might need one. After all, it was brand new. Surely somebody had already inspected it, right? Besides, the builder offered a 1-year warranty. They specifically told us that if we found anything wrong during the first year, they would come fix it. That sounded great to me. So after we moved in, I started making a list of little things for the builder to fix. Touch-up paint, a crooked switch plate, a loose edge of carpet, normal little cosmetic things. I thought I was being very thorough. Now fast forward about 6 months. Some family members came to visit after my daughter was born. One of them was my uncle. My uncle had spent his entire career working in construction. He had installed wood flooring for years. He had even built his own home. So we're standing outside my beautiful brand new house. I'm showing it off, and my uncle looks up at the roof and asks, "Where's the flashing?" Now, I had absolutely no idea what flashing was. So I said, "What flashing?" And he pointed to the roof and he said, "The flashing on the roof." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then he pointed at the neighboring houses. He said, "Look at their roofs." So I looked, and then he pointed at my roof and he said, "Your house doesn't have flashing." I remember thinking, okay, but is that a problem? And he said, yes. He explained that flashing helps keep water out. And if the roof wasn't properly flashed, water could get into the structure. And then he said something that really got my attention. He said, "I hope you don't already have water damage." Water damage? I hadn't seen any leaks. I hadn't noticed any problems. Everything seemed fine. But then he explained that water damage can occur in places you don't see. Inside walls, inside ceilings, inside attic spaces. And suddenly, I was a lot less confident that everything was fine. So the next week I called the builder. I explained what my uncle had told me. To their credit, they took it very seriously. They sent someone out right away. The builder's representative went up on the roof, looked around, came back down, and said, "Your uncle is right," which is both reassuring and terrifying at the same time, because now I knew my uncle wasn't imagining things. The roof actually was missing flashing. Then they inspected the attic space, and that's when things really got interesting. They found extensive water damage. Not just a little moisture, not just a stain, extensive water damage in roofing materials and ceiling materials over part of the house. Materials that now had to be removed and replaced. I remember being stunned. This was a 6-month-old house. 6 months. And yet there was already significant hidden damage. The builder ended up repairing the roof, installing the missing flashing, removing damaged materials, replacing damaged materials, It took months to complete. Now, fortunately, we caught it before it became an even bigger problem, because the thing my uncle was worried about was mold. If wet materials stay in place long enough, you can end up with mold issues that are much more difficult and more expensive to address. And that brings us to today's lesson. When I bought that house, I assumed new meant correct. I assumed somebody else had already checked everything. I assumed the builder's warranty was enough. But the reality is that builders are human. Subcontractors are human. Humans make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are hidden behind walls, ceilings, and roofs. After this experience, I became a huge believer in home inspections, not just for older homes, for brand new homes. In fact, when I later worked with real estate clients, I always encouraged them to get inspections on new construction. And you would be amazed at the number of issues inspectors can find on homes that have never even been lived in. So for all new and existing members of the It's Probably Fine Club, have you ever assumed something was fine because it was brand new? Leave it in the comments below. We may feature it in a future episode. And remember, the details matter more than people think they do. I'll see you next time.